And welcome back to Stories from the River, live on location from the NASCAR Hall of Fame Museum Gear Shop from the Purpose Summit 2024 with the man himself, Mr. Purpose, Mr. So Good, Davin Salvagno. Davin, you're actually a return guest to Stories from the River. Welcome back to the pod.
It is so good to be back on the pod. This is our 5th time together.
Wow.
The first time was a 4-episode crunch in one day,
yeah.
And it was a marathon. I enjoyed every minute of it. So great to be doing this live from the Purpose Summit.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
Yeah, so this is you get ready all year for this big shindig, big event. This is your 5th time to do this, right?
This is our 5th Purpose Summit. It is definitely a labor of love, and it takes, not just me, it takes an entire team to put this together. But yes, it's a year's worth of hard work to get to where we are today.
Yeah, I think I've given you quite a few titles, right? Like Chief Administrative Officer, Chief Galvanizing Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Executive Officer of Purpose Point of the Purpose Summit. There's several other hats that you're wearing, Chief Agenda Officer. So how is this one going for you so far?
You know, so I do wear many hats, and we also have our Chief Experience Officer, Lisa Oprita, our Chief Learning Officer, Corrine Forrest, and several other people that are in our Purpose Point community that, honestly, I've spent some time talking with them over the last 24 hours. Last night, even on the phone with Lisa and Corrine, they said, best first night we've ever had, hands down. I said, you know, I was thinking the same exact thing. And then today at NASCAR, all of the feedback that I'm getting from so many different attendees are just talking about what a truly transformative leadership experience.
Let's unpack that a little bit more. What made it the best first night last night?
I'm going to speak from what I believe, because I didn't actually ask Lisa and Chris. That's a great question, Charlie. I probably should have asked them that question. Why was it the best night? But for me personally, you know, I think a lot of times we come into the opening night of the Purpose Summit and we have to explain kind of why we're here, what we're trying to accomplish, and then often we wait until the second or third day to really show examples of what good looks like. And last night, Nick Craig did a really great job of kicking us off of why we were here and helping us. I really love this example of stop following other people's maps and let's become the map makers ourselves. And that wasn't planned, and it was a perfect lead into the Purpose Leadership Awards, where we shine the spotlight on organizations who are doing the map making, right, from different perspectives, right, from a for-profit perspective, from a nonprofit perspective, from a faith-driven perspective, all these different ways of coming at purpose so that we can learn from each other. And then we had John Gordon come back and, you know, for the 2nd year in a row and talk to us not just about living a life of success, but leading a life of significance and helping others do that. And so I felt like our first night this year was almost like a microcosm of itself of what the entire summit is supposed to be.
Yeah, and John, it was great to have him back again last night. Of course, I love hearing Nick speak, and I love the Purpose Leadership Awards. Very inspiring stories and videos, and the speakers gave some great messages. And then John, what was really cool about him, I got to spend a lot of time before and after he spoke. He was so personal, just engaging and having like several minutes of conversation. So in his talk really, I mean, stirred people. So he did a great job. And so it was a great cap on the night. And then we had the sponsors dinner last night. And so what have you heard from the breakout sessions? You've been roaming around today, and this morning there were 2 great talks as well. So maybe go into this morning first, and then I want to talk about the breakout sessions a little bit.
Yeah, so this morning was a powerful morning. We had Ron Carucci kick us off this morning. Ron's 2nd time speaking at the summit, 3rd time at the summit. He came to the summit 3 years ago just as an attendee, wrote the book To Be Honest, absolutely transformative work on leadership, the work that he created. And then when he came back last year and talked, it was really about that book and that work. And then he came back this year and he said, you know what? New content. I want to do something completely different, and I really want us to challenge our origin stories of who we are, why we think the way that we do, and to challenge those assumptions that we have within ourselves. And honestly, not just as a speaker and an author, but as a friend of mine, someone who I've been able to walk with over the last couple of years, that's exactly what he's done for me. And so to see that being shared with, you know, over 400 people in the room, and to afterwards, I'm hearing stories of them saying, literally, complete strangers walking by me saying, I've never thought of that, or I never understood why I did that, or continue to do that. It really, really helped start the day by kind of breaking down some barriers in the mind. And then we go to Mark Whitaker, and Mark Whitaker has an unbelievable story, and I don't want to spoil it for the podcast, so you'll have to go and you'll have to check out Mark Whitaker's recording from the summit. But for him to look at, this is what the biggest thing that stuck out to me. For those of you who don't know Mark Whitaker's stories, he went to prison for 8.5 years, and you'll have to find out why he did. But in that 8.5 years, he said, Davin, I learned more about being a husband and a father in those 8.5 years on the weekends in prison than I did the years prior with all the money in the world. And he talked about how he stepped into those purpose, serving others in prison. In fact, he actually even said that I didn't have time to go to prison because I was too busy serving in my purpose at prison, right? And so just to, like, my mind was blown sitting here going, if so many of us, think that we are, we got these limitations of why we can't step into our purpose. The guy's literally behind bars, and you don't need to be behind bars to be in prison.
Yeah, he said he got freedom.
He got freedom
when he was in prison.
Right? So
he became free when he was in prison. And you've always had really cool venues for your breakout sessions, right?
Yep.
The last 2 years at the University of Notre Dame, really cool venue and experience. And here now we're at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So what have you been seeing, hearing from all the breakout sessions today?
This afternoon has truly been, so one of the feedback that we get every single year is, okay, we get it. We know what we need to do and we know why we need to do it. And I feel like, I was just having this conversation out in the hallway, that previous Purpose Summits, as good as they are, it's kind of like having a potluck. And all these speakers come together and they're like, hey, I made Purpose stew, or I made Purpose chili, right? But it's potluck of chili after chili after chili after chili. And the feedback that we've gotten was, okay, we know the what, we know the why, but how? How do we do this? And I feel like this year was the first year that I'm hearing really, really great feedback of, there was a lot of the how today. There was a lot of the rolling up the sleeves and saying, here's how we did it. Here's how we made our map. Here's how you can make your map. You don't have to follow ours. You could just glean the insights and make your own, right? Or, hey, here's what we learned. Our dear friend Gary Ridge, who will close tomorrow, right? He's got the learning moment. He's always talking about learning new things. And so there's been so many learning moments that I've heard today from the breakout sessions of how people can go back and put this into action.
I think Amber had a quote last night leading into the Purpose Leadership Awards about like seeing the role models and seeing what good looks like. Matter of fact, I think you had a podcast called What Good Looks Like. And so I think what I'm hearing you say is they're getting to see how others do it and what purpose might look like in these other companies, and maybe kind of connect to that. Oh, we could do it like this, or maybe put our own twist on it. So they're getting the tools to really take that out into the battlefield, the mission field, if you will, the marketplace.
Right. They're getting equipped, right? And you were on that podcast. That was why we did the What Good Looks Like podcast. So you were a guest on that, and so was Gary, and so was Ron, and so was Amber. All these people that we're talking about, a lot of the speakers who were here were guests on that podcast because they were modeling it. And we wanted to point the spotlight at those who are modeling it and saying, this is what good looks like. This is what you can emulate. This is what you can take and glean and make it possible for yourself and for your organization.
When do you take it all in, and when will you relax? Because I think you were up late, sending LinkedIn messages or text messages or emails or something. So I was like, this guy's in the middle of this summit. Does he just stay up all night? I mean, I don't know if you're just super wired, but when will you kind of get to okay.
I don't know, honestly, if that ever will happen. I think every year we have that challenge. In fact, the week after the summit, every single year, Lisa and I are sitting in the office, usually our Chief Experience Officer, Lisa Oprita, we're usually sitting in the office the Monday after the summit, and there's this massive, almost depressing letdown. And it's an adrenaline thing, I think, because we run so hard to get to this day that the week after is typically quiet, and there's a lot of reconciling and kind of administrative stuff that has to happen. And so it usually typically isn't until we start getting the footage back and the comments back, and we get to relive it ourselves, that we get to enjoy it. I mean, I want to be honest and say that I am enjoying it while I'm here, but we're also having to be pulled in so many different directions. So I can't wait to come back and actually watch all the sessions that I missed, really take it in and enjoy it just like an attendee.
Well, you're trying to take it in, but you're also, this is a work event for you.
That's right.
Peak work event, and you're trying to make sure that all the plates are spinning and playing the right chords and music and everything's synchronized, and you're doing a great job. By the way, that blue looks good on you.
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
For anyone who would ever tell Charlie that he wouldn't give his shirt off his back, he literally just did. So Heather Greenwood gave me this beautiful blue pullover yesterday at the summit, appropriately branded for Broad River as a memory maker, and I couldn't find it when I came here to NASCAR today, and you were kind enough to give me your own shirt. So thank you, Charlie.
We'll get you
servant leadership in action.
We'll get you any kind of shirt to pull over you want. Davin, why do you do this? Why do you put on the Purpose Summit? What do you want to get? What do you want? Why is this your purpose? And what do you want the world to kind of get out of this?
That's a really good question, Charlie. And if I'm being honest, as Ron Carucci challenges us to be, I almost didn't want to do it again this year. I really didn't. I mean, that's not fair. I wanted to, but it's a lot of work, and it's really hard emotionally, mentally, even physically in these last couple weeks. I mean, it's a lot of weight to carry, and I'm grateful that I have others to share that weight with me. But the reality is, and I said this last night, is that 85% of people in the world, every single day, get up, disengaged, not happy to go to work, not stepping into their purpose, not knowing that they matter, not knowing that they make a difference, and then they go home at the end of the day exhausted, and they give their families their leftovers instead of their best. And then they're not present as the spouses they need to be, as the parents need to be, or even sometimes as the friends they need to be to others that they just need to be present in the moment to listen to. And we spend most of our waking hours at work. And business has an opportunity to be a transformative force for good, as we've talked to business as a force, because it's been a theme that Lippert and so many other companies have exemplified, but not just as a slogan, but truly as a movement. A way in which when people literally, I have this vision of people going into a box with kind of either a smirk or a frown on their face, but then they come out of that box happy. And so what happens in the course of a day with the businesses that we have? How do we use those to literally transform the hearts and minds of people so that they are better off after they come into work because we've infused them with a sense of purpose? And when I think of how much is at stake if we don't do that, I mean, we haven't moved the needle on that. I mean, we talk about engagement surveys and all those different things. That engagement number hasn't changed in decades. So I'm not saying that I have to be the only one in the world to do something about that, but if we don't, who's going to do it? And so the risk of not doing it is far too great to give up on this work that's so, so important.
So it's a calling.
It's a call.
Yeah, it's missional, it's purposeful for you.
It is.
And you're coming back to Charlotte. Why Charlotte in the first place? Why did you bring it here, and then you're coming back next year?
We are. So we're back in Charlotte, May 13th through 15th. Next year, maybe different venues. We're working that out, but we at least have the dates. But we did the summit the first 2 years in the Detroit market. We did the summit the next 2 years at the University of Notre Dame. And this is our first year in Charlotte. We always like to at least do it a second time. And, I mean, here's the thing. I mentioned that this is a lot of work, right? It's easy to kind of rinse and repeat the second year because it provides some level of respite, not having to move it to a whole other market and just tweak the agenda a little bit. But we've talked about this. I think that it's possible that Charlotte could be the future home of the summit for years to come. But for now, we are definitely coming back to Charlotte, both because I feel like we need to continue to establish the market, but also just as respite for our team as well.
Fantastic. Davin, thanks so much for the work that you do, for bringing it to Charlotte. Selfishly, I'm grateful for that. And that's our memory makers. We've got 105 of them here with us, and they're having a phenomenal time, and several of them have come up and said, thank you so much. And they're loving it. They're loving the speakers. They're loving the content. They're loving the venues and the learning. And we'll get a lot out of it. So it'll at least help this company do better. And so thanks for being on our podcast here, Stories from the River, and for the work that you do and that you're putting your heart, soul into and galvanizing the whole team around. So any final words?
Well, first of all, thank you. And not just because you sent 105 memory makers here, but you guys were way ahead of this journey of purpose before you and I ever met. And you're truly exemplifying what good looks like, not in a cliche way, but I just love the idea that you've continued to let each and every single memory maker organization know that they matter, that they make a difference, and then to prove that by having so many of them here, and not just being a participant, not just being a podcast host or a sponsor, but literally being an ambassador of this mission and an example for other organizations to follow. You, your leadership team, Heather, Manny, every one of your memory makers for leaders are truly exemplary, and I'm grateful to be able to shine the spotlight on what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. That is so good. Hey, next year, if you missed this year, come back May 13th through the 15th, 2025, back in Charlotte. Locations TBD, but we have the date set, and you don't want to miss it next year because it gets bigger and better every single year. Davin, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stories from the River with Davin Salvagno from the Purpose Summit.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.